Hello, Brother Monroe here. Welcome back to Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts, and a slightly different video today. It's a how-to video, and this is to answer some specific questions I got from not just those of you in the comments of my videos, but also some people on my Discord server who are new to the game, that picked it up at the Steam sale or something like that, and the mysteries around what shells do I pick? Because there's a lot of different types of shells that you can pick. So we're gonna build a ship, and we're gonna build it specifically to counter an existing ship, because it's a good way of showing off kind of the values you want. So I'm actually going to come back to that ship. So here it is. Here's Bismarck. This is the historical builds that I did with Treefrog, which has been reconstituted. Now, there's lots of interesting things about this ship, of course, but we are primarily interested in two things. The first thing is that we are interested in her main belt armor, and then the second thing we're interested in is her main deck armor. These are the protection for the citadel, and this is what we need to make a quick note of. So we have a 12.6 inch main belt and a 4.7 inch main deck, and Bismarck is running with an armor quality of 152%. So we'll write that down as well. And let's go back to our own vessel. So we want a gun system that is able to defeat Bismarck's armor. Now, what kind of range do we want to do it at is obviously an important consideration. And there's lots and lots of factors to take into account, which I will go through. Do not worry. But that is our overriding goal, to go through 12.6 inches of armor on Bismarck. Now, if you plop down a gun, and I'm just going to pick, let's go with the 16-inch gun. And by the way, I am using the balance mod for this, because I play with the balance mod. Numbers, if I'm mentioning numbers in this, they might be different in your game because of that. But the advice I'm going to give is not restricted to these particular numbers, is to give you the idea of how to do it. So, the numbers that we got off Bismarck, that 12.6 and that 4.7 inch, we're going to want to compare them to the penetration table, which you can see on the right-hand side of the screen. This pen table, it doesn't use the same thicknesses that we read off Bismarck's chart, and that's where armor quality comes in. So I'm going to grab a calculator. Now, Bismarck had a 12.6 inch main belt and an armor quality of 152%. So to convert the 12.6 inches into the thicknesses that we see in the penetration table, which, you know, is base thickness or effective thickness or whatever you want to call it, we need to multiply by 1.52 plus 1, so 2.52 to get our effective thickness. And that is, when we convert it, 31.75, well, 752, but just call it 31.75. So the magic number we're looking for is 31.75 as the belt, and the deck is 4.7, so times 2.52 gives us 11.84, but we'll just ignore that. But 11.84 inch effective. So the pen tables are only given to one decimal place at best. So we're looking for 31.8 and 11.8 inches of penetration between belt and deck. So those are the numbers that we're after. Now, it's worth pointing out that the numbers in the pen table are the maximum penetration. So if you have just enough, so you had 32 inches of pen, at a given range. That does not mean you will go through the belt every single time, because angle and things like that all come into play that reduce your effective pen. The pen table's values are a maximum, so you want to exceed your magic number. Just enough or just about it is not going to be good enough. You want to go past it. Not hugely, but you do want to go past it. So here we have a 16-inch 52 caliber gun, and we want to be able to reliably penetrate Bismarck's armour. Now let's assume, just very quickly, that we have a we're going to have a super crew, and we're going to have a tower. I'm not building the whole ship, don't worry. A tower. We're going to have the latest radar. We're going to have a rangefinder. Okay, so at what kind of range are we going to be able to likely enough get some form of hit? Let's go for 20,000 meters. That's a good engagement range. If we could defeat Bismarck's armor at that range, we would be golden. But that might be a tall order. What can we change about our gun? So obviously you can change the size. You can use a bigger gun or a smaller gun. So 17-inch, 15-inch, whatever. We're going to try and do this with the 16-inch gun. And you can change the length. So this is currently a 16-inch 52. That's already a pretty long weapon. But we can adjust that to adjust our values. There is, however, a trap that you can fall into. A lot of people, when they first pick up the game, will instantly just go, I just want the longest guns possible. A 62. Now, a 62 at 20,000 meters has a deck pen of 2.3 inches effective, which, if you convert it back to Bismarck's armor, so if you divide by 2.52, you'll get 0.9 inch. That won't go through her decks at all. So if you get a deck hit, it's not going to do anything. And the game loves to hit the deck all the time. So do not just instantly make your guns as long as possible. So we're actually going to stick with the default length of gun. A 52 is already a pretty long gun. But if you go back to the default, you can see that our deck pen jumps to 19 inches, which is pretty freaking nice. That is enough to go through the top of Bismarck's turrets. So we're fine in terms of our deck pen. It's our belt pen at that range that is suffering. So we could extend the gun a little bit, actually. Maybe let's go for a 55. What's that looking like? 14.4. So 14.4 compared to our magic number of 11.8. That's good. So let's try and go with a 55 gun. And that's a good way to do your lengths before you change anything else, just to get at the range you're looking at the right kind of balance between belt and deck pen. Just bear in mind, the longer the gun, the more you might get frustrated in close range firefights. And the other thing you need to watch out with lengthening the gun is your rate of fire. Again, I'm using the balance mod, so my rate of fire might look completely different to yours. But 1.32 rounds a minute, that's fine. But if you go back to that super long gun, you can see now down less than a round a minute. Okay, and at 52, 1.5. So, you know, that slightly longer gun seems fine to me. The other things we can change, of course, are our propellants and reload and all the rest of it. So, with the rotation mechanism, again, I'm doing a 1940 custom battle. I prefer electro-hydro over electrical, simply because they have less chance to make your ship go boom. And they're a little bit more reliable. So I tend to go with the electro-hydro systems. Also gives you a nice, fast traverse speed. give you more traverse speed, which is great. 4 degrees a second is pretty good on a turret like this. Reloading, obviously, you could always just go for the best tech possible, but I'm going to go for a historically realistic semi-auto loader, and I'm going to get 1.6 rounds a minute, which is fine. For now. We're going to go standard increased AP ratio. The next thing that you need to look at is you've got your shell size, your propellant, your bursting charge, and your shell types, and all of these are kind of interconnected. And it can be a little bit daunting because you do have a lot of options. But I would start with propellant. And there are basically 2 ways to set up your propellant, and I'll show you both. So the first is we could go down the cordite route. So we've got cordite 2, we've got cordite 3, which is much better, by the way. And then we have triple base, which is fantastic. Or we can go down the tube powder route. Either way, whatever suits your playstyle is fine. The cordite route, as you can see from cordite 3 here, cordite gives you more range. It reduces your penetration a bit, and it reduces your muzzle velocity a bit, but not as much as the equivalent tube powder. And you do get a small flash fire reduction chance on cordite 3, but on cordite 2 and cordite 1 it's pretty explodey. So cordite 3 is kind of where it's at. Tube powder, on the other hand, gives you faster firing guns, the shorter range, improves your accuracy and your pen at the cost of less high explosive damage from your shells, slightly slower shells, but the other big plus, much less of a chance of going boom. So it's a kind of toss up which one you want to go with. Do you prefer, the big damage from cordite shells? Or do you, particularly on HE, or do you prefer the kind of penetrating abilities of tube powder? Or do you like the best of both worlds in triple base, which is a pretty nice option. If we're going for punchiness, though, tube powder's your better bet. If you're going for damage, go for cordite triple base. Now, with that said, if you're going for a cordite build, let's use cordite 3, I would stick with a standard shell so that you don't compound your exploding. If you have access to triple base, you can get bigger shells. But light shells give you faster shells, but they don't do as much damage. And super heavy and heavy shells give you slower shells, but they hit like absolute trucks. So it depends which way you want to go. Super heavy is better at penetrating decks because they're slower. So they follow a higher arc compared to a light shell. So again, do be aware this will change your pen table. Always keep an eye on your pen table and what it's doing. But we're going to go with cordite standard. You can go picric or dunite, but I genuinely would recommend TNT as being the better option because, they just hull weight reduction, they give you extra pen, and they give you pretty good damage boost as well compared to the others. The only other one to consider really is dunite for that 10% shell pen, but its explodiness is not great. So we're going to go with TNT 4, standard shell, and then we need to choose our AP shell. We'll come back to HE. So let's look at our pen table. So our pen table is looking fine on the decks. We're at 14. That's good. But our belt pen is bad. And that is because you're using semi-ballistics. Not even semi-ballistic. Semi-armor piercing shells. I am not a fan of semi-armor piercing shells. Some people love them. The reason they are good is because they have a very generous angle at which they will hit a ship. So they're very unlikely to ricochet. And that's great. However, their lackluster penetration performance, I'm not a fan. I'm much more of a fan of semi-armour piercing ballistic caps. If you've got big guns, and you've already got loads of pen, then they're a good choice, because they give you a little bit more muzzle velocity, they give you damage boost, they're like semi-armour piercing, but they have, you know, that chance just about to they're just a little bit better at actually going through armor. This is fine if you know that you're going to obliterate your enemy anyway, but let's have just a look. So 20,000 meters, we're currently at 17.7, and if we go up to semi-ballistics, we go up to 22.3. So that's a pretty big jump in our belt pen. Worth it in my view, but we're still not anywhere close to our 31.8 magic number. You then have standard AP shells, and the regular cap. They're kind of your medium options, and then you have your high pen cap ballistics. Now, some people don't like them because they are quite likely to ricochet. However, I nearly always go with these just for the most... Like, you're building AP guns to pen. Now, if we look at our pen, we are up to 36.7 inch, which is more than our magic number of 31.8. So these guns should be able to hit through Bismarck's citadel at 20,000 meters on a good day. Obviously, the maximum values, not average values or anything like that. But they will, in theory, punch through Bismarck's armour at 20,000 meters. So that's a good option to have. We know that if we come up against Bismarck, we're going to have that level of destruction. Now, what about your HE shells? Well, here the magic number for me is 4. And the reason the magic number is 4 is because a destroyer, which is probably what you're going to be shooting with your HE shells, has a maximum armour thickness of 1.5 inch. And if it had armour as good as Bismarck, so that 2.52, 152% armour quality, gives you 3.8 inch effective. So if we bump it up to 4, that should cover, you know, any destroyer that could possibly be built in the game. So you'll notice that with incendiary shells, our HE numbers are less than 4 at every single range. With a high cap shell, there's still less than 4. So on this particular gun, I wouldn't use that. Nose fuse, we are more than 4 at 2,500 meters, but if we're shooting destroyers at 2,500 meters with our main guns, there's a problem. If you go up to base fuse, the historically very common HE fuse type, you'll see that we are now able to go through destroyers at 35,000 meters. So I would pick base fuse HE shells for this type of gun. If you went up to soft cap, you can see that our pen numbers get higher and higher. There is a use case for these, and that is if you are building a ship where you want your high explosive shells to be able to go through, say, the extended belt armor of a ship. You know, at 20,000 meters, we've got 20 inches of pen on these common point ballistic capped HE shells, which, if we were shooting at Bismarck, is actually a pretty spicy 8 inches of penetration on her armor scheme, which means we're more than able to go through her extended bits with our HE shells, which would be pretty damn spicy. But that's not normally how you're building ships in a campaign. Could we go through them with a soft cap? 13.6, which is about 5 inch. Yeah, we could. And with a base fuse, 9. See, even with a base fuse, we have a pen on Bismarck's scheme of 3.6 inch, which is just enough to go through her extended belts anyway. So, yeah, we'll stick with the base fuse. But, yes, if you wanted to go around deleting ships with high explosive, the soft cap and ballistic cap are quite interesting options. But if you're wondering, hey, Brother Monroe, why do you always end up with, like, cordite standard base fuse cap ballistics? Well, there you go. That's that's why, because you're a fairly historical kind of performance out of ships, and it also gives you pretty decent performance out of ships. Now, let's say you don't like cordite. Understandable. It goes splody, and you're using tube powder. We swapped to the tube powder. Our pen has jumped to 41.3, which is pretty spicy. And if you're going tube powder, I usually recommend going super heavy shells to compensate for the slight damage drop off. With a super heavy shell, we're now at 45.1 inches of pen, which is way more than we need. And here is where going down on your shell type can be quite useful. Can we go through it with a standard? 34.2. Yeah, we could. So we could go down to a standard AP shell, giving us much better angles against the against Bismarck. Could we do it with semi-armed piston ballistic? No, that's not enough. So you could go for a setup like this instead and get, you know, roughly similar penetration performance, but with less chance of exploding. Or, of course, you could keep the cap ballistic 2s and just punch through anything you wanted. We, however, are going to attempt to do this with the cordite setup. So all I'm going to do now, I'm going to break the video. Welcome back. So here is the ship completed. I did actually make a mistake and record a whole section where I was using super heavy cordite shells. And, well, I'm sure you can guess how that ended. Anyway, we're going to advance on Bismarck until we're about 25 kilometers out, and then we'll turn more broadside on. Not expecting huge hits at the start. Also had some target log bug issues, so if I do get that, I apologise in advance. It is very nice. Oh, nice, but that was a extended hit. It's not what we're looking for. Right, she's turning in towards us, which is when we want to turn to broadside her. You see here we have good accuracy at 20 kilometers, which is why I picked that range. If you've got about a 5% accuracy on your table, when you've got a properly leveled up ship, that'll equate to a pretty good chance to hit. See, we've got a main belt partial bent, but see how she's very angled? So, remember what I said? These values are not maximums, are not averages, sorry, they are maximums. So, be aware, you're not always going to be able to go through just because you have the numbers. That is why we're seeing partials when we're hitting the Citadel at this range, because Bismarck is very heavily angled towards us. We need her to turn away a little bit if we want her to be a bit more broadside on. We want our shells coming in like this, not like this, to get the right penetration. But Bismarck will know that's why she's angling in. But the closer she gets, the better our pen is, so it's fine. You can see we're just not able to go through the Citadel because of the aggressive angle that she's coming in at. But there, that one got a purchase. Main belt pen. And that was at 13 kilometers. So yeah, she had to come a bit closer because of the angle. But if she'd been flat broadside, we definitely would have been able to go through a citadel. So these 16-inch guns are a big danger, Bismarck. And, you know, she's worried about... She's closing in because she's a turtleback ship, I think. And she's having trouble going through our decks. Another big hit. Main belt pen. Do one more salvo, see how it goes. This is such close range, it doesn't really matter. Let's try an HE actually. Let's try an HE barrage. Because I did say, yep, base fuse. More than able to go through her extended portions. Even at longer ranges, at short range, that's going to mess her up. In short order. Go. And there you go. That is how you can build your ship to be able to sink ship like Bismarck. Now you're going, but what do I choose for? What numbers do I pick? What magic numbers do I go for? Well, as a rough rule of thumb, I mean Bismarck is a good example. So she's a 15-inch armed ship, but she has a 12.6-inch main belt. But if you assume that your enemies have belts equal to their gun size. So if you have a 15-inch ship, assume that it has a 15-inch belt, and that it has an armor quality similar to yours. If you don't know what armor quality to use, just use 150% or 160% if you're in the late game, but earlier game, you know, you can figure it out. But just use whatever your best armor quality is. So in this case, it would be 1.63. If we assume that a 15-inch times 2.63, our magic number, if we were designing the ship, would be 39.5. So at 20,000 meters, we might go, actually, we're a little bit under. So let's swap over to the tube powder super heavy version, and now we're going through 45, which is fine. And that's a good way of doing it, and that works no matter what kind of ship you're looking at. However, there are some special cases. The first one is destroyers, which I explained during the high explosive side of things. The other one is light cruisers. Light cruisers can only fit a maximum of 6 inches of armor, which means if they were using our pretty high-end armor, the magic number for a light cruiser is around about 16-inch effective pen. So you've got 16-inch, so we would get through that at just about 12,500 meters, 12,000 meters, 12 kilometers or so. That means that we can blow up a light cruiser with our HE shells at that range. And we could probably blow up a light cruiser with our AP shells at any range with these guns. But obviously, if you're designing your own light cruiser, and you want to fight a light cruiser, well, that gives you a magic number to aim at. And it's part of learning the game. There's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of things. I've played it so much, it's kind of automatic for me. And I don't have to sit and kind of look at the numbers and pour through it too often, because I know roughly if I pick, if I go the tube powder super heavy, or if I go the Cordate standard route, what kind of performance I can expect. But if you're new to the game and you don't have that experience, hopefully this video has helped you out. Remember to work out your magic numbers and adjust your pen tables accordingly. And the rest is all up to you. Use whatever works for you, whatever suits your play style, whatever suits your way of playing, and have fun. That's the main thing. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope this video has been useful. And I'll see you again soon, hopefully, for some more Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts. Bye for now.